The Zephyrian fleet limped through the void, their once proud vessels now scarred hulks barely holding together. Admiral Kethvar stared at the tactical display with 3 of his 4 eyes, the 4th permanently sealed from shrapnel during the last battle with the Dominion. 47 ships remained from what had once been a civilization of 12 billion souls. "Sir, we're approaching the Sol system," reported Navigation Officer Yiltha, her voice trembling with exhaustion. They had been fleeing for 8 months, jumping from system to system, always one step ahead of the genocidal hegemony Dominion that had turned their homeworld into molten glass. Kethvar's mandibles clicked nervously. The humans were a young species, barely 3 centuries into space travel. Their technology was primitive compared to most galactic civilizations, but they possessed something the Zephyrians desperately needed: isolation. The Sol system sat on the outer rim of explored space, far from major trade routes and the Dominion's immediate reach. "Open a channel to Earth," Kethvar ordered. "All frequencies." The communication officer's tentacles danced over the control panel. "Channel open, sir." Kethvar straightened his chitinous frame, trying to project dignity despite their desperate circumstances. "People of Earth, this is Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Remnant Fleet. We come before you not as conquerors or traitors, but as refugees. Our civilization has been destroyed by the hegemony Dominion. We seek sanctuary in your system, temporary shelter while we search for a new home among the stars." The response came faster than expected. A human face appeared on the main screen. Weathered features, gray hair, and surprisingly kind eyes. "Admiral Kethvar, this is Secretary General Maria Santos of the United Earth Government. We've been monitoring your approach and the situation with the Dominion. Please transmit your fleet roster and current needs." The straightforward response caught Kethvar off guard. No demands for tribute, no lengthy negotiations about territorial rights, just a simple request for information. "Transmitting now," Yiltha reported. 47 vessels, approximately 2.3 million survivors. "Critical shortages of medical supplies, food synthesizer components, and reactor fuel." Santos nodded thoughtfully. "Admiral, you're cleared to establish orbit around Luna, our moon. We're dispatching supply ships and medical teams immediately. Fair warning, though, we're not the most advanced civilization you've encountered." "Secretary General Santos," Kethvar's voice carried genuine gratitude. "Any port in a storm, as your people might say. We are deeply grateful for your compassion." As the Zephyrian fleet moved into Luna's orbit, Kethvar watched human vessels approach. The ships were indeed primitive by galactic standards: crude fusion drives, basic alloy hulls, and simple weapon systems. But they moved with purpose and coordination that spoke well of their crews. Dr. Sarah Chen was among the first humans to board the Zephyrian flagship. The xenobiologist had studied alien physiology from intercepted galactic databases, but seeing the insectoid Zephyrians in person was different. Their compound eyes reflected depth of intelligence and emotion that reminded her that intelligence took many forms across the galaxy. "Admiral, I'm Dr. Chen. We've prepared medical facilities on Luna's surface and several orbital stations. What are your people's most pressing needs?" Kethvar appreciated her directness. "Our young are suffering from nutrition deficiency. Our food synthesizers cannot properly replicate the proteins they need for proper development. We have approximately 50,000 juveniles aboard the fleet." Chen made notes on her tablet. "We'll analyze your nutritional requirements and set up production facilities. What about your wounded?" 3,000 require intensive care. The Dominion uses plasma weapons that cause cellular breakdown at the molecular level. Many of our healers were lost in the evacuation. "We'll do what we can," Chen promised. "Our medical technology might be different from yours, but we've had to get creative with limited resources." Over the following weeks, Luna transformed into a bustling refugee center. Human engineers worked alongside Zephyrian technicians to establish temporary habitats in Luna's underground caverns. The low gravity proved beneficial for the injured Zephyrians, whose homeworld had been similar to Earth's moon. Captain James Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Force found himself working closely with Zephyrian military coordinator Zexhan, planning the integration of their fleets for defensive purposes. The humans' tactical thinking impressed the veteran Zephyrian officer. "Your people think differently than most species," Zexhan observed during one planning session. "Most civilizations focus on technological superiority, but you emphasize adaptability and resourcefulness." Rodriguez smiled grimly. When you're outgunned, you learn to be creative. We've been the underdogs for most of our history. The real test came when long-range sensors detected Dominion scout ships at the edge of the system. Secretary General Santos called an emergency session with Admiral Kethvar. Admiral, we've detected 3 Dominion vessels conducting reconnaissance. They haven't made any aggressive moves yet, but we both know they're testing our defenses. Kethvar's antennae drooped. Secretary General, if you wish us to leave, we understand. We will not be the cause of your people's destruction. Santos's expression hardened. Admiral, when someone comes to your door asking for help, you don't turn them away because it might be inconvenient. Earth has made its decision. You're under our protection now. The words carried more weight than Kethvar initially understood. Humanity had studied the galactic community from afar for decades, learning about various species and their conflicts. They had seen the Dominion's pattern of expansion and genocide, knowing that eventually, the wave of destruction would reach them as well. But Secretary General, Kethvar protested, the Dominion has hundreds of warships. Your fleet, while brave, numbers fewer than 60 vessels. Santos stood and walked to the observation window, looking out at Earth hanging in space like a blue jewel. Admiral, there's something you need to understand about humanity. We've never been the strongest or the smartest, but we're remarkably stubborn. When we decide to make a stand, we don't back down. As if summoned by her words, the communication system activated. Secretary General, this is Admiral Thompson aboard the UES Defiant. The First Fleet is moving to intercept the Dominion scouts. Luna Defense Grid is fully operational. All stations report ready for combat. The Zephyrian Admiral watched in amazement as the human fleet moved with practiced precision. These weren't the hesitant movements of a species avoiding conflict. This was the coordinated response of a military that had been preparing for this moment. How long have you been ready for war with the Dominion? Kethvar asked quietly. Santos turned back to him, her expression grim but determined. Since we first learned they existed, Admiral, we knew this day would come eventually. The only question was whether we'd face them alone or with allies worth protecting. The 3 Dominion scout ships hung motionless at the edge of the Sol system, their sleek black hulls absorbing light like hungry shadows. Aboard the lead vessel, Commander Vextar studied the tactical display with growing interest. The primitive human fleet had arranged itself in a defensive formation around their moon, while the Zephyrian refugees huddled behind Luna's bulk. Curious, Vextar mused to his tactical officer. The humans are protecting the insects. Most species would have turned them away rather than risk Dominion attention. Perhaps they don't understand the consequences of defying us, suggested the tactical officer, a younger Dominion warrior eager for his first real battle. Vextar's predatory smile revealed rows of sharp teeth. Oh, they understand perfectly. Look at their formation. Textbook defensive positioning, overlapping fields of fire, mobile reserves positioned for rapid response. These humans have been preparing for war. The UES Defiant led the human interceptor force, its hull bristling with missile pods and railgun batteries. Admiral Thompson stood on the bridge, studying the alien vessels through the main view screen. The Dominion scouts were beautiful in their deadly perfection. Advanced alloys that shifted color to blend with space, weapon systems that could reduce a planet to ash, and shields that had never been penetrated by conventional weapons. Ma'am, reported Lieutenant Jackson at the sensor station, the alien ships are just sitting there. No active scans, no targeting locks. They're watching. They're measuring us, Thompson replied grimly, trying to determine if we're worth the effort to destroy or if we'll simply surrender when the main fleet arrives. Chief Tactical Officer Commander Reyes pulled up the intelligence files they had, compiled on Dominion tactics. According to Zephyrian data, they typically send a small force first to gauge resistance. If the defenders fight back effectively, they bring overwhelming numbers. If not, they proceed with standard conquest protocols. Thompson nodded. The choice before humanity was stark: submit immediately and hope for lenient treatment, or fight and face the full wrath of the Dominion war machine. But the decision had already been made in the halls of the United Earth government, in the shipyards of Mars, and in the hearts of every human who had witnessed the Zephyrian refugees' condition. Signal the fleet, Thompson ordered. Operation Hornet's Nest is a go. Across the human formation, weapon systems came online with deadly precision. The humans had learned from every conflict in their bloody history. incorporating lessons from ancient naval battles to modern space warfare. They understood that technology alone didn't win wars. Tactics, determination, and the willingness to pay any price for victory did. On Luna, Admiral Kethvar watched the human fleet through the observation dome of the Refuge Command Center. Dr. Chen stood beside him, her tablet displaying real-time sensor data from the human ships. "Your people are brave," Kethvar said quietly, "but those Dominion scouts each outgun your entire fleet. Their shields can absorb tremendous punishment, and their weapons can punch through any armor you possess." Chen's expression remained calm. "Admiral, there's something you should know about human military doctrine. We don't fight fair." Before Kethvar could ask what she meant, the human fleet suddenly scattered like startled birds. Instead of maintaining their defensive formation, the ships spread out across the system in seemingly random patterns. The Dominion scouts, apparently interpreting this as panic, began to advance. "What are they doing?" Kethvar's translator struggled with his species' expression of bewilderment. "Baiting the trap," Chen replied. Commander Vextar watched the human ships scatter with satisfaction. Typical primitive response. They lack the discipline for coordinated defense. Signal the other scouts. We advance on the refugee fleet directly. The 3 Dominion vessels accelerated toward Luna, their weapons charging with deadly energy. They ignored the scattered human ships, dismissing them as a broken formation fleeing in disorder. It was a fatal mistake. The first indication that something was wrong came when the lead scout's shield suddenly fluctuated. Chief Engineer Krillmoth checked his instruments in confusion. "Commander, we're reading massive gravitational distortions throughout the system." "Impossible," Vextar snapped. "There are no massive bodies in this region that could—" His words were cut off as space itself seemed to twist around his ship. Hidden throughout the system, humanity had deployed their most closely guarded secret. Artificial gravity well generators, devices that could create localized distortions in space-time itself. The technology was crude and energy-intensive, but it served its purpose perfectly. The Dominion scouts found themselves suddenly trapped in overlapping gravity fields that prevented faster-than-light travel and severely hampered maneuvering. Their advanced ships, designed for swift strikes and rapid withdrawal, became sitting targets. "Now," Admiral Thompson whispered. The scattered human ships converged from multiple vectors, but they weren't firing conventional weapons. Instead, they launched waves of what appeared to be simple kinetic projectiles. Chunks of metal and rock accelerated to tremendous velocities by magnetic launchers. The Dominion shields, designed to deflect energy weapons and sophisticated missiles, proved less effective against simple mass moving at relativistic speeds. The first projectiles were absorbed by the shields, but they created cascading resonance effects that the shield generators couldn't compensate for quickly enough. "Clever," Vextar admitted grudgingly as his ship shuddered under the barrage. "They're using our own shield technology against us." The human kinetic bombardment continued relentlessly. Unlike energy weapons, which could be blocked or deflected, the projectiles followed simple physics. Momentum was conserved, and that momentum had to go somewhere. The Dominion shields began to fail under the constant hammering. When the first scout's shields collapsed, the human fleet switched tactics instantly. Concentrated laser fire and missile salvos targeted the exposed vessel's critical systems with surgical precision. The Dominion ship, its hull breached in dozens of places, began venting atmosphere and debris. "Withdraw," Vextar ordered, but the gravity wells made escape impossible. His remaining ships were trapped in an engagement they couldn't win against an enemy they had dramatically underestimated. The second scout attempted to ram the nearest human vessel in desperation, but the UES Yorktown simply wasn't there when the alien ship arrived. Human ships, smaller and more maneuverable than their opponents, danced between the gravity wells like fighters in a 3-dimensional maze. Admiral Kethvar watched in stunned silence as the human fleet systematically dismantled forces that should have been invincible. "How?" he whispered. Dr. Chen smiled grimly. "We've been studying galactic warfare for decades, Admiral. We noticed that most species rely heavily on shield technology and superior firepower, but shields have limits and every technology has weaknesses. We just had to be creative enough to exploit them." The battle ended when the last Dominion scout, crippled and bleeding atmosphere, transmitted a surrender signal. Admiral Thompson's response was swift and uncompromising. "Dominion vessel, You are ordered to transmit all intelligence regarding your fleet dispositions and planned operations against the Zephyrian refugees. Comply or be destroyed. Commander Vextar, his pride shattered along with his ships, complied. The intelligence data that flowed from the Dominion computers revealed the scope of the threat facing not just the Zephyrians, but eventually all free civilizations in the galaxy. As the gravity wells powered down and the human fleet resumed defensive positions, Secretary General Santos addressed both her own people and the Zephyrian refugees watching from Luna. Today, we sent a message to the Dominion, she announced. Earth stands with those who seek freedom and refuge. We will not yield to tyranny, no matter how advanced or numerous our enemies may be. But even as the humans celebrated their tactical victory, long-range sensors detected the Dominion's response. A battle fleet of over 200 warships, already en route to Sol. The real test was yet to come. The Dominion battle fleet emerged from hyperspace like a plague of locusts, 237 vessels of death spreading across the outer edge of the Sol system. Admiral Korthvex commanded from the flagship Inevitable Conquest, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed any human vessel. His tactical display showed the primitive human defenses, clustered around their inner planets, pathetic compared to the overwhelming force he commanded. Deploy! The fleet in standard extermination formation. Korthvex ordered, his voice carrying the cold certainty of a predator. Eliminate all resistance, then proceed with planetary sterilization protocols. On Luna, emergency klaxons wailed as the Refugee Command Center transformed into a war room. Admiral Kethvar stood beside Secretary General Santos and Admiral Thompson, studying the massive enemy formation through holographic displays that combined human and Zephyrian sensor technologies. 237 ships, Thompson reported grimly. Our entire fleet numbers 83 vessels, and that includes converted civilian craft and the surviving Zephyrian ships. Santos's expression remained calm despite the overwhelming odds. Admiral, in your professional opinion, what are our chances of victory? Thompson hesitated, then answered honestly. In a conventional engagement? 0. We'll be lucky to destroy 10% of their fleet before they overrun our positions. Then we don't fight conventionally, Santos replied, turning to Kethvar. Admiral, we need to discuss the unthinkable. Kethvar's compound eyes reflected understanding and horror in equal measure. During their months of cooperation, human and Zephyrian scientists had worked together on various projects. One classified initiative had focused on theoretical applications of human gravity. Well technology combined with Zephyrian knowledge of stellar mechanics. Secretary General. Kethvar's voice carried weight of terrible knowledge. What you're suggesting could destroy everything in the system, including Earth, Santos acknowledged. But it might be our only chance to stop the Dominion from spreading their genocide across the galaxy. Dr. Chen burst into the command center, her tablet displaying readings that made no sense. Ma'am, we're detecting massive energy buildups throughout the outer system. The Dominion fleet is charging weapons that could sterilize every planet simultaneously. The intelligence from the captured scout crews had revealed the Dominion's true intentions. They didn't simply want to destroy Earth and the Zephyrian refugees. They planned to make an example that would terrify every other species in the galaxy into submission. Sol would become a dead system, a monument to the futility of resistance. How long do we have? Santos asked. 6 hours until their weapons reach full charge, Thompson replied. Once they fire, there's nothing that can stop the planetary bombardment. Santos turned to the communication station. Get me a direct line to President Zhang on Earth, Chancellor Kumar on Mars, and Director Okafor at the Jupiter colonies. The holographic display activated, showing the 3 most powerful leaders in human space. Their faces reflected the same grim determination that had carried humanity through countless disasters. Ladies and gentlemen, Santos began, the Dominion fleet has arrived in overwhelming force. They intend to sterilize our entire system as an example to other species. We have one option remaining, Operation Solar Wind. President Zhang spoke first, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were discussing. The theoretical calculations suggest a 30% chance of success and a 70% chance of complete system destruction. Those are better odds than waiting for the Dominion bombardment, Chancellor Kumar added grimly. At least this way we go down fighting. Director Okafor nodded slowly. The outer colonies are already evacuating essential personnel to the deep space platforms. We're as ready as we'll ever be. Santos looked at each of them in turn. This is a decision that will affect every human being in the system. I won't make it alone. We're unanimous, President Zhang replied. Operation Solar Wind is authorized. The plan was audacious to the point of insanity. Using gravity well generators positioned throughout the system, human and Zephyrian engineers would attempt to destabilize Sol itself, creating a controlled stellar flare massive enough to sweep the Dominion fleet from space. The energy release would be equivalent to a small supernova, and there was no guarantee that Earth or any of the inner planets would survive. Across the system, teams of human and Zephyrian technicians worked frantically to modify gravity, well generators for their new purpose. The technology had never been tested on such a scale, and the margin for error was essentially zero. On the inevitable conquest, Admiral Korthvex watched his tactical display with growing puzzlement. The human fleet was withdrawing deeper into their system instead of advancing to meet his forces. Their behavior suggested either cowardice or madness. Sir, reported his sensor officer, we're detecting unusual energy patterns throughout the system. The humans appear to be activating some kind of gravitational manipulation devices. Korthvex studied the readings with professional interest. Gravity wells? Crude but effective for area denial. They're trying to create a defensive barrier. Should we adjust our approach vector? Unnecessary. Our shields can withstand any gravitational distortion they can generate. Maintain course and continue weapons charging. It was a logical assessment based on conventional applications of gravity well technology. The Dominion had encountered similar devices before and knew their limitations. What Korthvex couldn't have anticipated was humanity's willingness to weaponize their own star. Deep within Sol's core, massive gravitational forces began to shift as the gravity well network activated, in carefully calculated sequence. The star's natural fusion processes, stable for billions of years, suddenly found themselves subjected to external influences that disrupted the delicate balance between nuclear fire and gravitational collapse. Stellar activity is increasing rapidly. Dr. Chen reported from Luna's sensor station. Coronal mass ejection probability is approaching critical levels. Admiral Thompson coordinated the evacuation of civilian populations to hardened shelters and deep space stations. All non-essential personnel to protective positions. This is not a drill. The first sign that something was wrong came when the Dominion fleet sensors detected massive energy buildups within Sol itself. Solar flares were natural phenomena, but the readings they were getting suggested something far beyond normal stellar activity. Admiral, the inevitable conquest science officer reported with growing alarm. Stellar emissions are exceeding all known parameters. I'm reading energy levels equivalent to a Class 7 stellar event. Korthvex finally understood what the humans were attempting. They're trying to trigger a stellar flare. Impossible. The energy requirements alone would destroy any civilization attempting such madness. Sir, gravitational distortions are cascading throughout the stellar core. If our calculations are correct, the resulting flare could sterilize everything within 2 astronomical units, including their own planets. Korthvex realized with grudging respect. These humans would rather destroy everything than surrender. The choice before the Dominion Admiral was stark. He could continue the advance and trust his shields to protect the fleet from whatever the humans unleashed. Or he could withdraw and report that a primitive species had successfully defied Dominion expansion. All ships maintain course. Ready all defensive systems. We will not be intimidated by primitive species willing to commit mutual suicide. As Sol's activity reached critical levels, both fleets braced for an event that would determine the fate of not just the Sol system, but the future of galactic civilization itself. In the depths of space, gravity wells strained against stellar forces. Human ingenuity collided with alien technology, and 2 civilizations prepared to discover which was more powerful, overwhelming force or desperate innovation. The Doe star that had nurtured humanity for millennia was about to become either their salvation or their funeral pyre. Sol erupted. The stellar flare that burst from humanity's star defied every natural law the Dominion understood about stellar mechanics. Cascading gravity wells had created resonance patterns within the star's core, focusing billions of years of accumulated fusion energy into a directed blast that painted space with lethal radiation and superheated Plasma Admiral Korthvex watched his tactical display in fascination and horror as the wave of destruction raced toward his fleet at near light speed. All ships, maximum shields. Brace for stellar impact. The Dominion fleet's shields, designed to withstand conventional weapons and natural hazards, flared brilliant white as they absorbed energies equivalent to a small supernova. Advanced alloys that had never failed began to buckle and melt. Sophisticated electronic systems, hardened against electromagnetic pulses, fried as radiation levels exceeded all design parameters. Shield generators overloading across the fleet, reported the tactical officer aboard the inevitable Conquest. We're losing ships in the outer formations. Through the viewscreen, Korthvex watched as vessels that had conquered a dozen star systems simply vanished in balls of plasma. The humans had succeeded in creating a weapon that turned their own star into a cannon, and they had aimed it directly at his fleet. On Luna, protected by the planet's bulk and emergency radiation shielding, Admiral Thompson monitored the disaster unfolding in space.
73 Dominion vessels destroyed or disabled.
The rest are falling back beyond the asteroid belt. But the cost to humanity was devastating. Mercury had been scoured clean by the stellar flare. Its mining colonies vaporized instantly. Venus's thick atmosphere had saved the terraforming stations, but barely. Earth itself was protected by its magnetic field and atmosphere, though massive auroras painted the sky in brilliant colors as charged particles cascaded around the planet. Mars reporting severe radiation damage to surface installations, Dr. Chen announced, her voice tight with grief. Olympus Base lost contact 20 minutes ago. Secretary General Santos stood before the observation window, watching the dance of deadly light that surrounded their planet. Casualty reports. Still coming in, Thompson replied. Preliminary estimates suggest 12,000 dead, mostly in the outer colonies and deep space installations. Could have been much worse. On the surface, it appeared that humanity had won a Pyrrhic victory. The Dominion fleet was crippled and retreating, but the cost in human lives and infrastructure would take decades to recover from. However, Admiral Kethvar recognized something that the humans themselves had not yet realized. Secretary General, he said quietly, your people have just accomplished something that no species in recorded galactic history has ever achieved. Santos turned from the window. What do you mean? You've stopped a Dominion battle fleet in its tracks. Not defeated it, stopped it completely. In 3,000 years of expansion, the Dominion has never retreated from a single system. The implications of Kethvar's words began to sink in. Throughout the galaxy, other species monitored hyperspace communications and sensor networks. News of the Sol system's impossible defense would spread to every civilization within 100 light years. Admiral Korthvex, aboard his badly damaged flagship, came to the same realization. The stellar flare was subsiding, but the damage to Dominion prestige was irreversible. For the first time in their history, they had been forced to retreat by an inferior species. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving transmissions from across the sector. Multiple species are requesting details about the engagement. Deny all requests, Korthvex ordered grimly. This information is classified at the highest levels, but it was too late. The Jovian colonies had been broadcasting the entire battle on open frequencies, ensuring that every species with sensor equipment would witness humanity's desperate gambit. Within hours, the story would reach civilizations that had spent centuries living in fear of Dominion expansion. 3 days later, the first unexpected visitors arrived in the Sol system. A small fleet of crystalline vessels emerged from hyperspace, their hulls gleaming like cut diamonds in the starlight. The ethereal collective had spent 2 centuries as unwilling vassals of the Dominion, forced to provide technological innovations in exchange for their species' survival. Admiral Thompson, still coordinating relief efforts for the outer colonies, was surprised when the alien ships requested permission to approach Earth directly. This is Harmonic Mind Zaraeth of the Ethereal Collective, came the transmission, accompanied by complex mathematical patterns that served as their species' emotional context. We seek audience with the defenders of Sol. The meeting took place in Luna's rebuilt conference center, with hastily installed environmental systems accommodating 3 different atmospheric requirements. Zaraeth appeared as a translucent, vaguely humanoid figure whose body seemed to be composed of living crystal that pulsed with internal light. We have monitored your conflict with the Dominion, Zaraeth began, their voice like musical chimes. For 47 rotations, we have served as their technological slaves, developing weapons they use against other species. We wish to discuss alternatives. Secretary General Santos exchanged glances with Admiral Kethvar. What kind of alternatives? Your gravity well technology, combined with our harmonic resonance systems, could create defensive networks capable of protecting entire star systems. We propose an alliance, technology sharing in exchange for mutual protection. It was the first crack in the Dominion's empire, but it wouldn't be the last. Over the following weeks, more ships arrived in Sol. The Talon Confederation, warrior nomads who had been hunted to near extinction by Dominion forces, brought damaged warships and crews desperate for a chance to strike back. The Gardner Collective, peaceful plant-like beings whose worlds had been strip-mined by Dominion industry, offered biological technologies that could help restore worlds devastated by warfare. Each new arrival brought the same message. They had heard about humanity's stand against the Dominion, and they wanted to know if the rumors were true. Could a primitive species really have forced the galaxy's greatest military power to retreat? Dr. Chen found herself at the center of an unexpected technological revolution. Human gravity well technology, previously considered a curious but limited innovation, suddenly became the foundation for entirely new defensive strategies when combined with alien science. The ethereal's harmonic resonance can amplify our gravity fields by orders of magnitude, she explained to Santos during one of their daily briefings. The Talon Confederation's weapon systems can punch through Dominion shields using sympathetic vibrations. The Gardeners can grow living hulls that adapt to damage in real time. And in return, Santos asked, they want our tactical doctrines and our willingness to fight. Apparently, most species either surrender immediately or fight using conventional strategies the Dominion has countered 1,000 times. We're the first civilization they've encountered that treats warfare as a problem to be solved, rather than a contest of superior technology. The refugee center on Luna was rapidly becoming something else entirely, a meeting place for species that had never worked together before, united only by their opposition to Dominion expansion. Human engineers worked alongside crystalline ethereals and plant-like gardeners, sharing knowledge that none of them could have developed alone. But in the depths of space, Admiral Korthvex was not idle. The Dominion High Command had dispatched additional fleets to the Sol system, along with specialized vessels designed specifically to counter gravity well technology. The next assault would not rely on conventional tactics or superior numbers alone. As humanity celebrated their unexpected role as catalysts for galactic resistance, they were unaware that their greatest test still lay ahead. The Dominion was coming back, and this time they would bring weapons designed to turn Sol's own star against the species that had dared to weaponize it. The second Dominion fleet arrived with purpose that transcended mere conquest. High Admiral Nexthul commanded from the experimental vessel Stellar Domination, a ship specifically designed to counter the gravity well technology that had humiliated the previous invasion force. Accompanying the flagship were 400 warships and 12 planet-killer dreadnoughts, along with something far more sinister, stellar manipulation devices that could turn Sol itself into a weapon against its children. Deploy the stellar inhibitors in a spherical formation around the primary, Nexthul ordered, his cybernetic implants interfacing directly with the ship's tactical systems. If these primitives wish to play with their star, we shall teach them the consequences of such arrogance. The inhibitor devices were massive constructs, each the size of a small moon, designed to create artificial gravitational dead zones around stars. Once activated, they would prevent any external manipulation of stellar cores while simultaneously destabilizing the fusion processes that kept stars burning. Sol would either burn out completely or explode in a true supernova. Either way, the human problem would be solved permanently. On Luna, the transformed refugee center had become the de facto headquarters for what historians would later call the First Galactic Resistance. Representatives from 17 different species crowded the conference rooms, their various atmospheric requirements creating a complex maze of environmental barriers and life support systems. Admiral Kethvar stood before a holographic display showing the approaching Dominion fleet, his compound eyes reflecting the gravity of their situation. The stellar inhibitors are unlike anything in our databases. If they succeed in deploying them around Sol, we'll lose our primary defensive capability and likely our star as well. Secretary General Santos studied the tactical projections with growing alarm. How long do we have? 48 hours until the devices reach optimal positioning, reported Commander Yiltha, the Zephyrian navigation officer who had become the de facto coordinator for the multi-species fleet. Once they activate, stellar manipulation becomes impossible. The Resistance fleet was impressive by pre-war standards, 163 vessels representing the combined naval forces of 18 species. Human ships flew alongside ethereal crystal constructs, Talon Confederation raiders, and dozens of other vessel types that had never been designed to work together. But against 400 Dominion warships and 12 planet killers, they were still hopelessly outmatched. "We need a different approach," Admiral Thompson announced, studying intelligence reports from the approaching fleet. "Direct engagement will result in our complete destruction within hours." Harmonic mind Zara-Ith pulsed with agitation, their crystalline form shifting between different spectral frequencies. The inhibitor devices contained Dominion personnel, living crews maintaining the systems. Our harmonic resonance technology could potentially disrupt their neural patterns, but only at close range. "Suicide missions," growled war leader Krathen of the Talon Confederation, his predatory features scarred from countless battles. "My warriors have done such things before, but getting close enough to those devices." Dr. Chen activated a new display showing the theoretical capabilities of their combined technologies. "What if we don't try to fight them conventionally? The Dominion expects us to defend our positions or attempt another stellar flare. They're not prepared for a coordinated, multi-species assault using technologies they've never encountered working together." The plan that emerged from 36 hours of desperate collaboration was audacious even by human standards. Rather than defending Sol directly, the Resistance fleet would split into specialized task forces, each designed to exploit specific weaknesses in Dominion technology, while the others created diversions. The Ethereal Collective would use their harmonic resonance to create ghost fleets of false sensor, signatures that would appear as massive military formations. To Dominion scanners, the Talon Confederation's raiders would conduct hit-and-run attacks on the outer pickets, while Gardner Collective bioships released self-replicating organisms designed to interfere with Dominion computer systems. Meanwhile, human ships equipped with modified gravity well generators would attempt to reach the stellar inhibitors and disable them before the devices could complete their deployment. It was a plan that required perfect timing, absolute coordination between species that barely understood each other, and more luck than any military commander had a right to expect. "This is insane," Admiral Thompson muttered as the fleet began deploying. "We're betting everything on technologies that have never been tested together and tactics that exist only in theory." "Welcome to human warfare," Santos replied grimly. "We've been making impossible plans work through sheer stubbornness for our entire history." The battle began when the ethereal ghost fleets materialized across the outer system, their harmonic projections creating the appearance of thousands of warships emerging from hyperspace simultaneously. Dominion sensors, overwhelmed by contradictory data, reported massive reinforcements arriving from all directions. High Admiral Nextol watched his tactical displays with growing confusion. "Impossible. Our intelligence indicated no major civilizations were allied with the humans." "Where did these fleets come from?" "Sir, sensor analysis indicates massive gravitational distortions associated with the Phantom fleets. They appear to be using some form of advanced holographic projection combined with localized space-time manipulation." The Dominion fleet began redeploying to counter the apparent threat, pulling vessels away from their escort duties around the stellar inhibitors. It was exactly what the Resistance had hoped for. As confusion spread through the Dominion ranks, Talon Confederation raiders struck the outer pickets with devastating precision. Their ships, designed for hit-and-run warfare, appeared from nowhere, unleashed their weapons, and vanished before the Dominion vessels could respond effectively. "Sir, we're taking casualties in the outer formations," reported the tactical officer aboard Stellar Domination. "These raiders are using some kind of stealth technology we haven't encountered before." What the Dominion couldn't detect was that the Talon ships weren't using stealth technology at all. They were using human tactical doctrine combined with their natural predatory instincts. Attack from unexpected angles, strike critical systems, withdraw before the enemy can mount an effective response. It was warfare as humanity had practiced it for millennia, refined by a species that had evolved as pack hunters. While the Dominion fleet struggled to counter threats that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere, the real assault began. Human ships, their hulls modified with Gardner biotechnology and their systems enhanced with ethereal harmonic resonance, approached the stellar inhibitors on trajectories that should have been impossible to achieve. Captain Maria Rodriguez piloted the UES Determination toward the largest inhibitor device, her ship's biohull adapting to radiation levels that would have killed her crew in a conventional vessel. Approaching target Alpha, Gardner organisms report successful infiltration of device computer networks. The bioorganisms, barely visible to conventional sensors, had been drifting toward the inhibitor devices for hours, appearing as nothing more than space debris. Once in contact with the massive constructs, they began the process of subverting Dominion computer systems from within. Target Alpha's defensive systems are fluctuating, Rodriguez reported, beginning gravity well deployment. What happened next defied everything the Dominion understood about physics and warfare. Instead of trying to destroy the inhibitor devices, the human ships used their modified gravity wells to create localized space-time distortions around each construct. The devices, designed to manipulate stellar cores, found themselves trapped in artificial gravity bubbles that prevented them from accessing Sol's fusion reactions. High Admiral Nexthal watched his carefully planned operation collapse in real time. How are they doing this? Those devices are protected by our most advanced shielding technology. Sir, the bioorganisms appear to be rewriting our defensive protocols in real time. The humans aren't destroying our systems. They're converting them to work for the Resistance. It was a uniquely human approach to warfare. Instead of fighting superior technology directly, they had found ways to turn that technology against itself. The stellar inhibitors, designed to destabilize stars, became gravity well generators protecting Sol from further manipulation. As the immediate threat to their star diminished, the Resistance fleet regrouped for the next phase of their impossible plan. They had saved Sol, but the Dominion fleet remained largely intact and very, very angry. The real battle was about to begin. High Admiral Nexthal's fury transcended the merely personal and entered the realm of the cosmic. For the second time in Dominion history, a primitive species had not only resisted their advance but had turned their own technology against them. The stellar inhibitors, now converted into Resistance gravity well generators, mocked him from their positions around Sol. All ships, converge on the inner system, he commanded, his cybernetic implants glowing with barely contained rage. Deploy the Omega protocols. We will reduce every planet in this system to component, atoms. The Omega protocols represented the Dominion's ultimate expression of warfare. Total annihilation using reality distortion. Weapons that could unmake matter at the quantum level. 12 planet-killer dreadnoughts began charging weapons that could literally erase worlds from existence, while the main battle fleet moved to ensure no Resistance vessel escaped to spread word of Dominion defeat. On Luna, alarm klaxons wailed as sensors detected the massive energy buildups throughout the Dominion fleet. Admiral Kethvar's compound eyes reflected readings that defied comprehension. Secretary General, he said quietly, those energy signatures, they're preparing to use quantum dissolution weaponry. Nothing can survive that level of reality distortion. Santos stood before the tactical display, watching the approaching wave of destruction with the calm that came from having already made peace with impossible choices. How long do we have? 6 hours until the planet killers reach firing position, Admiral Thompson reported. The quantum dissolution process takes approximately 30 minutes to charge. Then, he gestured helplessly at the display. Dr. Chen burst into the command center, her tablet displaying readings that made no scientific sense. Ma'am, we're detecting massive quantum fluctuations throughout the system. But they're not all coming from the Dominion fleet. The revelation that followed challenged every assumption about galactic politics and hidden powers. The stellar inhibitors, now under Resistance control, had been designed not just to manipulate stars but to serve as quantum resonance amplifiers. When humanity had captured and converted them, they had unknowingly created a galaxy-spanning communication network. We're receiving transmissions, reported Communications Officer Jackson, his voice filled with wonder. Multiple sources all using the quantum resonance network. It's like the entire galaxy just woke up. The first transmission came from the core worlds of the ethereal collective, where billions of crystalline beings had been monitoring the Sol system's impossible resistance. Their harmonic voices sang across space with frequencies that carried both gratitude and determination. Children of Sol, this is the full harmony of the ethereal collective. Your courage has inspired remembrance of what we were before the Dominion's chains. We rise, more voices followed. The aquatic depth speakers emerged from ocean worlds where they had hidden for centuries, their bioships beginning the long journey toward Sol. The machine intelligences of the synthetic compact, enslaved for millennia as computational resources, began shutting down Dominion networks across 17 sectors. War leader, Krathan of the Talon Confederation watched his tactical displays with predatory satisfaction as reports flooded in from across known space. The Dominion slave species are revolting simultaneously. Their garrison fleets are being overwhelmed on every front. But the most significant transmission came from an unexpected source. Deep in the galactic core, where ancient species had withdrawn from younger civilizations' conflicts, something stirred that had been dormant for 10,000 years. "This is Prime Consciousness Veltar of the Precursor Archive," came a voice that seemed to carry the weight of geological ages. "We have observed your species' development with interest, humans of Sol. Your approach to warfare through cooperation rather than domination echoes methods we employed before our withdrawal from galactic affairs. We are intrigued. The precursors were legend, the species that had first developed faster than light travel, had seeded the galaxy with technologies that younger races still didn't fully understand, and had mysteriously vanished from active civilization eons ago. Their archives contained knowledge that could reshape reality itself." "Prime consciousness," Santos replied, hardly believing she was addressing beings older than human civilization. "We face annihilation within hours. Any assistance would be gratefully received." "Assistance implies charity," Veltar replied with something that might have been amusement. "We propose partnership. Your species demonstrates strategic thinking patterns we find refreshing." "Very well. Observe. What happened next would be studied by xenoarchaeologists for millennia. Across the Sol system, ancient devices buried deep in asteroids and planetary cores began to activate. Humanity had unknowingly been living in a precursor observation post, their entire civilization developing under the watchful eyes of beings who had been waiting for species clever enough to notice the hidden infrastructure around them. The asteroid belt revealed itself to be an ancient defensive network, dormant for 10,000 years but still functional. Ceres was not a dwarf planet but a massive weapons platform. The outer gas giants concealed gravitational manipulation systems that dwarfed anything humanity had imagined possible. High Admiral Nexthal watched his tactical displays transform as readings appeared that violated every known law of physics. "Impossible. This system contains precursor technology. How did our intelligence fail to detect this?" "Sir," his science officer reported with growing panic, "we're reading energy signatures that match theoretical precursor weapon systems. The entire system is revealing itself to be a defensive installation. The 12 planet killers, preparing to unleash quantum dissolution weapons on Earth, suddenly found themselves targeted by systems that could manipulate matter at scales they couldn't comprehend. Ancient beam weapons, dormant since before the Dominion existed, focused on the massive dreadnoughts with surgical precision. All ships, emergency withdrawal." Nexthal ordered, but it was too late. The precursor systems didn't destroy the planet killers. They simply convinced their quantum dissolution weapons that they didn't exist. The massive vessels folded in on themselves as their own reality distortion fields consumed them. As the Dominion fleet fled in disorder, leaving behind wreckage and shattered pride, a new voice joined the galactic communication network. Admiral Kethvar, speaking for the Zephyrian refugees who had started this impossible chain of events, addressed the species now awakening across the galaxy. "This is Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Remnant Fleet, speaking from Sol System. To all species who have suffered under Dominion oppression, the age of submission is ending. Humanity has shown us that cooperation between different civilizations can achieve what no single species could accomplish alone." Dr. Chen, monitoring the quantum resonance network, watched as thousands of species across hundreds of star systems began coordinating resistance efforts. Secretary General, we're detecting massive fleet movements throughout the galaxy. It's like every oppressed civilization is moving simultaneously. The Dominion, for all their military might, had never faced coordinated resistance on a galactic scale. Their strategy had always relied on fighting one species at a time, using overwhelming force to crush opposition before it could spread. Now they faced an entirely new paradigm. Dozens of species working together, sharing technologies, and coordinating strategies across vast distances. But even as humanity celebrated their role in sparking galactic revolution, Admiral Thompson studied long-range sensor data with growing concern. "Ma'am, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the galactic core. The Dominion isn't just sending reinforcements. They're activating something big." Prime Consciousness Veltar's transmission carried a note of ancient concern. "The Dominion possesses artifacts from our era, weapons we thought safely destroyed. They are preparing to deploy the Voidmakers." Santos felt a chill that had nothing to do with Luna's temperature. "What are Voidmakers?" "Reality erasers," Veltar replied grimly. "Weapons that can unmake entire star systems by severing their connection to the quantum foundations of existence. If deployed successfully, Sul and everything within 100 light-years would simply cease to have ever existed." The victory celebration on Luna fell silent as the true scope of their situation became clear. They had won a battle and inspired a galaxy-wide revolution, but the war was far from over. The Dominion's response would either end in their complete defeat or the destruction of everything they had fought to protect. In the depths of space, ancient powers stirred, and the final confrontation between tyranny and freedom prepared to unfold on a scale that would determine the fate of galactic civilization itself. The final Dominion fleet emerged from the galactic core carrying weapons that predated recorded history. Supreme Overlord Vashtar commanded from the Absolute Zero, a vessel constructed around a captured precursor Voidmaker, a weapon designed not merely to destroy matter and energy, but to erase the quantum signatures that allowed them to exist in the first place. "Deploy the reality anchors in a pentagonal formation around the target system," Vashtar ordered, his ancient cybernetics interfacing directly with technologies that his species barely understood. "Once the void field is established, we will demonstrate the price of defying the natural order." The massive fleet of 800 vessels included ships from every Dominion client species, pressed into service for what their leaders proclaimed would be the final assertion of galactic dominance. Behind them stretched a trail of devastated worlds where the revolution sparked by Sol had been crushed with unimaginable brutality. On Luna, the makeshift command center had become the nerve center for the largest military alliance in galactic history. Representatives from over 200 species crowded the expanded facilities, their combined fleets numbering in the thousands. But as impressive as the Resistance Armada appeared, everyone understood they faced an enemy wielding weapons that could literally erase them from existence. "The reality anchors are positioning themselves around our system," reported Admiral Thompson, his voice tight with controlled fear. "Once they activate the void field, physics itself will become hostile to our continued existence." Prime Consciousness, Veltar's ancient presence filled the communication channel with weight that seemed to bend space around the receivers. "The Voidmakers were our greatest mistake. Weapons created during the Convergence Wars when we believed absolute power could ensure absolute peace. We thought them all destroyed." Secretary General Santos studied the approaching formations with the calm that came from having already faced impossible odds multiple times. "Is there any defense against these weapons?" "Theoretical possibilities exist," Veltar admitted. "The void field requires quantum coherence across vast distances. If that coherence could be disrupted..." The ancient being paused, calculating possibilities that spanned eons of experience. "Your species has demonstrated remarkable creativity in weaponizing fundamental forces. Perhaps." Dr. Chen's tablet displayed readings that hurt to contemplate. "The quantum resonance network is still active through the captured inhibitors. If we could create interference patterns across multiple dimensional frequencies..." She looked up from her calculations with expression mixing hope and terror. "We could potentially turn the entire galaxy into a quantum tuning fork." The plan that emerged from desperate collaboration between humanity's innovative thinking, precursor ancient knowledge, and the combined technologies of 200 allied species was audacious beyond any previous human scheme. Instead of trying to defend against the Voidmakers, they would attempt to overload them by creating galactic-scale quantum harmonics. Every species in the Resistance would simultaneously activate every quantum-capable device in their possession. Ethereal harmonic resonators, Zephyrian gravity well generators, human stellar manipulation systems, precursor dimensional anchors, and technologies from civilizations whose names were unpronounceable by human tongues. The resulting quantum storm would either disrupt the void field or tear apart the fabric of local spacetime entirely. This plan has a statistical probability of success approaching 0, Admiral Kethvar observed, his compound eyes reflecting the mathematical certainties displayed on tactical screens. It also has a probability of destroying the galaxy approaching 30%. Those are better odds than we've had all week, Santos replied grimly. Signal all Allied fleets. Operation Frequency Storm is authorized. Across the galaxy, an unprecedented coordination began. On ethereal crystal worlds, billions of beings aligned their harmonic frequencies to precise mathematical formulas. In the depth of aquatic civilizations, bioelectric organisms prepared to discharge their stored energies in coordinated pulses. Machine intelligences calculated quantum interference patterns with processing power that strained the limits of their artificial consciousness. The Dominion fleet approached Sol in perfect formation, their reality anchors deploying in patterns designed to create an inescapable void field around the entire system. Supreme Overlord Vashtar watched his tactical displays with satisfaction as the ancient weapons powered up for the first time in millennia. Initiate void field generation, he commanded. Let this primitive system serve as an example to any who would challenge the Eternal Dominion. The reality anchors activated with power that warped space visibly, creating zones where the fundamental constants of physics began to fluctuate. Matter within the forming void field started to lose coherence as quantum foundations eroded. It should have been the end of human civilization and everything they had inspired. Instead, something unprecedented occurred. As the void field reached critical formation, every quantum-capable device in the galaxy activated simultaneously. The harmonic resonance created by 200 species working in perfect coordination generated interference patterns that existed in dimensions the Dominion had never imagined. The galaxy itself became a musical instrument played by civilizations that had learned to work together rather than apart. Sir, the Absolute Zero's science officer reported with growing alarm, the void field is destabilizing. We're detecting quantum interference from everywhere. How is this possible? The answer came as the interference patterns reached critical intensity. Instead of erasing Sol from existence, the Void Makers found their reality distortion fields reflected and amplified by the galactic-scale quantum storm. The ancient weapons designed to unmake matter instead began unmaking themselves as their own energies fed back through dimensional space. The explosion when 8 reality anchors and their Void Makers self-destructed was visible from neighboring galaxies. But instead of devastation, the quantum storm created something entirely new, stable dimensional gateways that connected every allied world instantaneously. The galaxy had become a single, unified civilization in the span of moments. Supreme Overlord Vashatar watched his ultimate weapons consume themselves and his fleet scatter as dimensional storms made conventional navigation impossible. Impossible. No species should possess the coordination necessary for galactic-scale quantum manipulation. Sir, his communications officer reported with voice filled with dread. We're receiving transmission from every system simultaneously. It's everyone. Every species we've ever conquered is speaking with one voice. The transmission that followed carried the combined voices of 200 civilizations, their words synchronized across space and time, through the quantum resonance network that had transformed from weapon to communication system to something approaching collective consciousness. People of the Dominion, the galactic voice spoke with harmonies that spanned species and technologies. Your age of conquest is ended. We offer you the choice your ancestors never gave us. Surrender and join the galactic community as equals, or face justice for the crimes committed across millennia. The response was swift and decisive. Across Dominion space, client species that had been forced into service turned on their oppressors. Slave worlds erupted in coordinated revolution. Even within the Dominion fleet, species that had been pressed into service began abandoning their posts to join the growing rebellion. On Luna, Secretary General Santos stood before the observation window watching Earth hang in space like a blue jewel. The planet that had given refuge to desperate Zephyrian refugees now served as the unlikely capital of a galactic civilization built on cooperation rather than conquest. Secretary General Admiral Kethvar approached, his compound eyes reflecting deep gratitude. My people owe humanity a debt that can never be repaid. We came here as refugees begging for shelter. You gave us not just a home, but hope for the future. Santos smiled, thinking of the journey that had brought them from desperate refugees to galactic liberators. Admiral, there's something you need to understand about humanity. We don't help people because we expect gratitude. We help because it's the right thing to do. That's just who we are. Dr. Chen joined them at the window, her tablet displaying readings from across the galaxy as civilization after civilization joined the growing alliance. The quantum resonance network is stabilizing into permanent communication channels. We've accidentally created a galactic internet that operates faster than light and connects every inhabited world. The transformation of galactic civilization happened with startling speed. Trade routes that had been controlled by Dominion military forces became open highways between allied worlds. Technologies that had been hoarded by the few spread rapidly to benefit everyone. Species that had never met began collaborating on projects that spanned star systems. Prime consciousness. Veltar's final transmission carried notes of satisfaction that resonated across dimensional frequencies. Humans of soul, your species has accomplished something we precursors believed impossible. You have united a galaxy through cooperation rather than conquest. We withdraw once more from active affairs, confident that younger civilizations have surpassed our achievements. Years later, when historians compiled the records of what became known as the Liberation War, they would struggle to explain how a single species of stubborn, creative primates had managed to overthrow an empire that had dominated the galaxy for millennia. The answer, they concluded, lay not in superior technology or overwhelming force, but in humanity's fundamental belief that helping others was worth any sacrifice. The Zephyrian refugees who had limped into Sol system as desperate survivors now served as ambassadors to a galactic civilization that measured success not by worlds conquered, but by lives saved. Earth had given them sanctuary when they needed it most, and in return, they had helped humanity discover its true destiny among the stars. In the end, the most powerful weapon in the galaxy hadn't been reality distortion fields or stellar manipulation technology. It had been compassion, the simple human belief that when someone asks for help, you help them no matter the cost. That principle, shared across 200 species, had transformed tyranny into freedom and isolation into unity. The galaxy would never be the same.